This is That's So Random. This is part 2 of the paper bag shorts pattern that I am working on. And this one is the second half where I'm adding the waistband and the hembands and also putting in the tie for the waistband. I think that's it. So let's get into the video. Okay, so now that I'm on another day, I am going to take the hembands. I didn't want to do the waistband yet, so I started with the hembands. And this is why I wanted to have the... This is why I wanted to have 4 and sew them together along the bottom hem and then create like almost like a bias seam. You'll see why I didn't get to keep that thickness like it showed in the pattern, and the pattern was really hard to understand for trying to create this band. So I'm just putting side seams together like it told me to. I forgot to flip these ones. I should have had the bottom one be on top and the top one on the bottom, because the seam didn't necessarily line up. And with all my other seams, I did these, I think I did these regular. I don't think I did these French. Yeah, I think I did these regular. So pressing open the seam to have it lay flat, because I didn't do French seams, I did regular seams, which was a mistake because trying to also pin those to the shorts made it a little difficult because I had a little too much extra in the hemband. So, and if I know correctly, the notches are supposed to go on the inner seam and the non-notch parts are supposed to go on the outside. But again, the instructions didn't say exactly how to piece them together. Because I actually did want it to be that thickness on the hemband, but because I didn't cut out 4 pieces and I didn't have enough fabric to cut out for 2 more pairs, you know, you'll see that how small it is. So I'm lining up the the inner seam and the side seam to create that. This is me questioning how I pinned it and realizing I don't think I pinned it right, taking it out, taking it to the other side, trying to line up the notches on the inside, the inner seam. So now here I go and I take the side seam and the inseam and I fold it to create a fold to where I can put another pin for the hemband. And you can see how much of a gap I have because of the fact that I didn't do French seams for the hemband. So to fix that, I kind of push most of it towards a seam to hide it a little bit better. So just stitching the hemband like I did all the other stuff, but I only stitched it with a regular seam at 1/4 of an inch. So what I did here was I took the ham to press all my edges towards the hemband to hopefully conceal them. And this is definitely the part where I was kind of confused on how to fix the raw edges, essentially. How to not have raw edges on the hemband, especially with my cutting being so jagged. And you can see there where, because I had too much fabric, because I did not do a French seam, you can see I had folded it. But since it's on the inside of the leg, you really can't see it when I wear them. So this is where I start playing with trying to figure out what I should do for the hemband. I thought I can just fold it over and then, which is what I did. I folded a little bit over and then I folded it to hide the raw edges from when I had sewed it onto the actual shorts. And it's a lot smaller than I wanted. I wanted that thick band. Again, that's why I said if I do redo these, I definitely want to have it be... Oh, because it asked me to understitch. So I went and understitched real quick to keep the... What was it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to understitch to keep the seam allowance towards the going down. But like I was saying, like, that's why if I ever remake these shorts, definitely gonna cut out 2 pairs of the hembands and stitch them together at the bottom seam to create almost like a bindus tape or a bindus binding, because I wanted the thicker look to begin with, but not knowing that the instructions were a little wonky and didn't, you know, they didn't explain how to do these hembands right, to be honest, if you look at the instructions. So, for some reason I don't have the footage of me actually folding up the hemband. So this is the waistband, and they want you to do buttonholes or eyelets. So you can thread a piece of cord or something through the waistband. And so I'm marking out where the eyelets are going to go on the back side of this, because I'm going to add another sheet of fabric over top of it. Which, thinking about it now, maybe I should have done the placement of the eyelets on that little piece of fabric. Live and learn. So really making sure I can see the markings of where the eyelets need to go on the waistband, and my machine comes with a little device to do eyelets, and I just tried to match what's already on the waistband to one of the little measurements that are on the device, and put it into the machine. So this does buttonholes for me, so I don't have to... It's placing... I'm still learning with this, so sometimes placing it's a little weird. I have to make sure that I move everything to be zigzag stitch and on a 0, and... Yep. So... And it's very finicky. Sometimes it doesn't want to click. I have to take it out, put it back in, because it's got to sit in there just right. So, and this is when I realized I put it too big, had to make it smaller, and then I add the little thing of fabric to stabilize it a little bit more, so it's not just a thin piece. And this is why I said I wish I had put the eyelet thing on the fabric, because I had to figure out where it was on the other fabric and then stick the new fabric on top, because I'm doing this from the back side. And there are my 2 eyelets. A little crooked, but you know, when you're going in blind. And I saw somebody else put a pin in at the top part of their eyelet eyelets when they go to open it so you don't accidentally cut through the seams. So I just like to take a seam ripper, poke it in a little bit of the fabric, move it up, poke a little bit into the fabric, rip it. Because scissors are... I don't have small enough scissors to do this, so I'd rather just use the seam ripper and just grab a little bit of the threads of the fabric and rip it that way. And just, you know, trimming all the threads. Trying to make it look pretty. So you can see the extra bit of fabric. And I trimmed these ones on the inside because they can pop out. So, and then I trimmed the fabric a bit so it's not just this giant piece of fabric. Just a big enough to keep the eyelets stabilized. And I'm folding it over like it's telling me to do, like the instructions told me to do, lining up the notches, and then ironing it, starting in the center and working my way down towards the end. So, and it was folded wrong sides together or right sides together? Okay, it was folded wrong sides together. To create already that pre-creased. And then I have to stitch the back seam closed. Let's find out if I did that as a French seam or just as it is. So, yep, I'm going to do that as French seam this time. I learned my lesson with the hembands. I made sure to do a French seam for the waistband. Went to go get something. guess that was me pressing the waistband. I didn't even show how I did the French seam again. Boy, I'm all over the place for this. So now I'm matching up the waistband. So I'm trying to get the eyelets near the top of the shorts, starting with the side seam and notch of the waistband, lining those up first. And then I had pulled the fabric a little too much on the top, so I'm just trimming it down. So trying to line the center of those two eyelets to be in the center of the front seam. Just pinning around to hold it, pulling the floral fabric to be at the edge so I don't accidentally not catch it. So I start in the back and sew all the way around. And the one good thing about having little bits that didn't quite sit right and they're puckered is that this is going to have elastic threaded through it, and you won't see that because it will be all crunchy. Scrunchy? Crunchy? Scrunched. So, and then I just have to fold on that seam and hide. Can't remember, did I hide the edges? It's easier if I pull it inside out. Okay, so I remember what I did. So I tried to line up the fold, and then I folded the raw edges in to line up with the seam that I had already created from sewing the front part of the waistband. And I only folded over maybe 1/4 of an inch. And I did something that which didn't follow pattern, which was they wanted me to leave about, they want to say like a 5-inch opening in the back to feed the elastic through. I chose not to do that because I have eyelets. That's what the eyelets are for. I mean, made it a little bit more difficult, but I was being lazy and I did not feel like having to go back after I put in the elastic and sew up the back seam of the waistband. So, and the reason why I'm pinning it so be towards the front, so I can, what they call stitch in the ditch, and try and get the seams to lay inside where I had already sewn of the seam without having any other visible seams, but that's a lot harder than it looks. So it's a little not laying flat, but again, these are paperback shorts, so you're going to have the elastic to scrunch it in towards you. And my camera gave out, so you get it. I stitched in the ditch, and then I put a tool to try and keep a little more than 5/8. I think they wanted 3 centimeters, whatever that was in inches. I just tried to do, and this was a guide to, because it wasn't 5/8, it was bigger than that. This is a guide, and this was the biggest I could get it, so I just cut the fabric along that guide to create 2 pockets, essentially, even though one of them is only accessible with the buttonhole eyelets. And I tried to pull it a little bit to kind of flatten out so it's not so wrinkly, but again, the elastic, it hides all sins. So here I am trying to measure out the elastic. I pulled it just a little bit, just to make sure it was a little tighter. And then snipped it. So what I like to do is I like to safety pin my elastic to the outside of the fabric, and then take another safety pin and safety pin the elastic to feed through, so I don't have an accidental I fed the elastic too much and now it's on the inside moment, because there are plenty of times that has happened to many of people and I am terrified of that. So I'm just pulling the elastic through, doing it through the eyelet, not through the back of the waistband, because I didn't want to have to stitch again and have that seam. So I just went through that. I mean, it was difficult to feed it through the eyelet, but once I got it through the eyelet, it, you know, it worked just fine. And because I didn't do French seams there. I was gonna say the French seams make seams and feeding stuff through are a pain in the butt. Can we just admit that? That is like the most difficult thing to try and get around, where you had a seam and you're feeding something through. Like, look how long I'm struggling with that. And I'm thinking it's the elastic, and it's not. It's just the safety pin in the seam. I think I was using a super tiny safety pin, so this is just taking forever. So, and what you want to do is, because I didn't film it, you want to make sure that you go through the eyelet that you originally went through, because you don't want the elastic to be sticking out in the front. Just a helpful tip. And then just sew the elastic and cutting threads very slowly. And as you can see, I did do it the right way, made sure it went through the same hole, and then just pulling to get that to pop on the inside. And so what I did was I grabbed some of the extra fabric. I still had some, not enough to do what I wanted to do with it, but I used this, I cut it up to make it into ties. Because I didn't want to have just blue ties. I wanted to have the fabric to kind of match with it, or, you know, I didn't want some random ties. I wanted something that matched with the floral panel pattern. I cut them about, I think, 2.5 inches, but then I really didn't mark them, so they're a little lopsided. But half of it's encased in the shorts anyways, so who's gonna know? And I sew this, so then I sew it into a tube. So can I just say, turning something inside out with the safety pin is a pain in the butt. I tried so hard. It took me so many tries to get to this point. And I need to figure out either to get something to turn tubes or figure out an easier way that is not a safety pin. so satisfying. But like, you get caught. Like, I got caught and it like... So as you can see, one end is a little wider than the other. And I realized after I had sewn the one that I didn't have it long enough. So I cut out a second one, did the same thing, and then just sewed them together. And sewed the edge so it didn't fray on me by folding it over a few times. And then feeding this through, and I used a bigger safety pin this time, it looks like, so it made it a lot easier to scrunch it through. Don't know why I didn't do that for the elastic. And for this one, you can go through the second eyelet and not through the original one. And just pulling it to try and get the two cords to be even, which can be a little difficult because one is always going to be longer than the other no matter how much you play with it. And trying to squeeze in the where I had stitched the two parts together. So the shorts are technically done now. Everything is done, but I still want to edit the top, so we're gonna have that in another video, and then the full reveal. So that was the shorts pattern, and the next video, part 3, is actually what I did with the top half of that dress and how I made it into like a little cute, would it be a crop top? It just sits, like, it literally just sits at like the base of the breast. So that's the next video, so hope to see you then.